Your eyes do not deceive you, folks, because this is a Ferrari 599 GTO. And yes, on Drive Every Ferrari this week, I'm gonna drive it. Oh my God. The 599 GTO was produced in 2010 and 2011 and was limited to just 599 cars, which means you had to be invited to buy one. It was only the third Ferrari to feature the GTO Gran Turismo Omologato name after the 1962 250 GTO and the 1984 288 GTO. And despite having no competition Omologato to speak of, it's still regarded as one of the most collectible modern Ferraris, and prices are on the rise. So this week you are going to get a man-sized portion of GTO beans, the history of Ferrari GTOs, all of this car's quirky features, and a complete review of this fascinating car. So if that sounds like your special kind of vodka, let's get on with it. Can you feel that? The 599 GTO exudes a dark, brooding menace, even when it's just standing still. The body is clothed in purposeful vents, grills, intakes, aerodynamic flicks, curves and contours. This is a 599 that's been exposed to gamma radiation. It's an angry 599. It's a dangerous 599. This is an example where a car's fearsome reputation precedes it. And I have to confess, I'm a little bit scared.
You gotta be kidding me.
I'm a little bit scared to give this car the full beans today. But let me man up for a minute and let's have a look at this car in detail, and particularly why this car is so special. First of all, it's rare. There are only 599 examples, as shown on a special plaque inside the cabin. The 599 GTO was launched in 2010 and the same year as the limited open-top SA Aperta. The base price of the GTO was £306,000, over £100,000 more than the 599 GTB at the time. But today, the gap is even wider, because a 599 GTB will set you back, what, £85,000? 90 maybe? But one of these, well, that's going to set you back at least £650,000. And it's rising. Now, as we walk round the 599 GTO, what dominates our view? Well, obviously, it is all the enhanced bodywork. It's the bulges and the vents and the grills. This is a far more pumped up version of the 599, and it's both actually quite subtly done and then at times absolutely outrageous. If you looked at this car from afar, you might not think it was anything more special than the standard 599. But if you look up close and you actually see these quad vents here on the bonnet, you've got a far more pronounced bulge going through the center. The grills are bigger and wider to get more air into the car and under the car on that flat underside. It's worth spending a bit of time looking at the aerodynamic features on this car, because really the whole thing is plastered in these scoops and cutouts, and they're moving the air all the way around the car in order to help downforce, in order to make it go more quickly, in order to cool certain things. Everything has a purpose. It's all been designed in the wind tunnel, and really the closer you get to a 599 GTO, the more details you find. These delicate little grills, lots of vents. Look how nicely sculptured these wing mirrors are, very much like the 430. This car, of course, has a grey roof on it, which helps to make the roofline look lower. I use that trick with my 458 Italia. And you can see how this part of the car is angled to push the air through here and back over that very subtle little flick on the boot lid. You can actually fit your whole hand through there. There's so many little details that you just don't notice at first. You've got air rushing in through here in order to cool the brakes, and then it's super accelerated. The air then comes out through this vent, along through these sculptured doors, and then you get it going over the top and the back to help push the car down, and also you get it going through this vent to cool the rear wheels and brakes. As you can see here at the front of the car, not only is the nose overall designed to reduce the wake coming off of the front of the car, but also you notice there is a small secondary spoiler just down here in carbon fibre, and that's to increase downforce and also to force cool air to the oil radiator. Over the 599 it features new springs, stiffer anti-roll bars and second generation Magnetor heliological suspension system. Now we've got an aluminium body shell, aerodynamic enhancements include a flat underbody and improved ducting to the brake discs. And no tour of a 599 GTO would be complete without showing you these. These are called, and I'm not joking here, wheel donuts, and they have a very special purpose refined in the 599XX program. What happens is these donuts actually keep the hot air compact and close to the discs in order to reduce drag. Ferrari specifically designed the 599 GTO to be at the limit of handling with electric controls set to deliver increased performance. And it's based on the 599XX customer racing program, so in short, it's a spiky son of a bitch. Now this car is painted in F1 2007, which as many of you will know is the colour designed to make the Formula 1 cars look a lot more red on television. And here's the belly of the beast, the engine of the 599 GTO. This is a 6-litre naturally aspirated 65-degree V12, and it is a work of art, frankly. It sits quite far back, of course, for better weight distribution. You've got your GTO plaque there at the front, proudly proclaiming its bloodline. Power is up from 612 in the 599 GTO to 661 brake horsepower, and that is officially a lot, especially when you consider that weight has been reduced by 100 kilograms over the standard GTB. Peak torque is 457 foot-pounds, which is 620 newton meters. 0 to 60, 3.4 seconds. 0 to 124, 9.8 seconds. And the top speed of this, 208 miles an hour. And I suspect that may be limited. But I have to say, out of all the engines I've seen so far on Drive Every Ferrari, this is the most impressive looking. And at the back of the car, it's all going on. Not only do we have this massive, huge carbon fibre splitter, 4 tailpipes, but this is the only Ferrari with a black badge at the back. And look over here, those famous GTO letters. And since the 599 GTO is also technically a Grand Tourer, let's have a look in the boot. As you can see, it's pretty capacious. You can fit a hell of a lot of luggage in here. Worth mentioning also that every 599 was automatically Ferrari Classicade. And just check out this lovely suede leather-bound owner's manual booklet. That's cool. That is sheer class and something sadly that Ferraris of today just don't have. Here we are then. How about a tour of the inside of a 599 GTO? Now I should say thank you so much to the owner of this car, Tony, who has kindly allowed me to slather all over it and get all excited and obviously to go for a drive in a minute. You, sir, are a legend, and the Car Guys and Drive Every Ferrari salutes you. And I have to say that this is a very tastefully spec'd car. It's quite minimalist. There's just red stitching, bit of Alcantara, grey, bit of leather, grey/black, and we have matte carbon fibre throughout, kind of like my TDF. Over here we've got a GTO plaque that sort of looks like something else is supposed to have been written on it, because there's an awful lot of gap, but there isn't. Maybe there's supposed to be a special message on there. And the center console, we got 2 huge inlets for the cooling system. We've got the cooling controls here, very similar in fact to the 612 Scaglietti. Just above that we have the limited 1 of 599 plaque and a little push, and we give it a push, and inside there is the stereo, thankfully hidden from view, because of course Ferrari stereos not the nicest looking things. On the center console here, this reminds me very much of a Cylon Interceptor from Battlestar Galactica. The matte carbon, the little buttons, the combination of swoops, this grab handle, which I think is fantastic. You've got a proper manual handbrake. This is an older Ferrari, remember. Down here in the middle, we've got 4 little licorice gumdrops. One to open the glove box, another to lock the doors, the central locking, and unlock them. And you've also got turning the parking sensors on and off. Got a hazard warning button here, and just up here, and actually quite reminiscent of the 458 Italia, which was launched the year before this car, you have these 3 circular buttons for launch, reverse, and changing between auto and manual on the paddles. The seats are part Alcantara and part leather. They're very, very comfortable buckets, and you've also got the hand-stitched Ferrari horses there, the enlarged versions in the headrest. The only things these carbon-backed seats don't have is full-on racing harnesses. Behind me I've got the parcel shelf for putting all your bespoke luggage in, so it's a useful bit of extra storage, not quite as big as the one in the F12. So you've got a little pocket immediately behind you here for putting in maps, 2 little cases here for putting a phone and all your little bits of change and knickknacks. The steering wheel is actually pretty unadorned. All you've got is the Manatino here, which has got the wet setting, sport, race, traction control off, and everything off. You've also got the engine start button and 2 huge carbon fiber paddles, which are exceptionally pleasing to use. They are far more robust than in something like the 575 or the Super America. These are chunky items. They give you a lot of confidence. They don't feel like they're going to break anytime soon. Contrast that with these sort of standard Fiat group type items for the indicators and for the windscreen washers. They're not that nice at all. Up ahead of me I've got a white central rev counter which goes up to a frankly astonishing 10,000 RPM. We will not be doing 10,000 RPM today because I suspect that the owner would not look very favourably on us, but to see it even on there means that you're in something very special. Over on the right hand side we've got a Formula 1 plaque, which if you remember is included in things like the Scuderia and the Challenge Stradale. In this one though, because by 2010 Ferrari weren't looking like they were going to win any Formula 1 championships anytime soon, and in fact hadn't won anything since 2007, the plaque here just says 31 Formula 1 championships. Very sensible. Just hark on about the good old days. But overall it's tastefully spec'd, it's nice and simple, and there is nothing to distract you from that rev counter. That is the only thing that your eye goes to. And now, do you think I should take the 599 GTO out for a drive? Yes, I agree with you. 599 GTO engine start. You ready? Oh, it's an angry sound. Oh my goodness, that is... I mean, that's already special. The engine's on, the keys are mine for the afternoon. It's exceptionally hot, but let's see what this 599 GTO is all about. Let's have our manual mode on, and we're moving. And to be honest, I am shaking a little bit. This car's reputation is fearsome. Okay, so the car is now warmed up. I've been driving it for a few miles, getting used to it, and the thing I've noticed straight away is the suspension is pretty harsh. It's quite a bumpy, jarring ride on normal British roads, which of course means exceptionally good cornering characteristics, but on these sort of floaty, bumpy roads, it's not so great. It is a bit fidgety, but at least because it's fidgety, it means it's got your undivided attention. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, that's what you need, because it does this. It does that. It can do that. They allow normal people to drive these. Normal people can just buy this and have this kind of power beneath their right foot, which is frankly terrifying, because it's sort of like giving a nuclear weapon to a toddler. It's not the sort of thing you want to do. You really need to do some background checks before you allow people out into the world in a 599 GTO. Everything about this engine is angry. It's fury. It's intensity. This thing wants to eat the world. It wants to destroy everything. It's constantly pissed off. It's never happy. It wants to go faster, it wants to go slower, it wants you to change up a lot, it wants you to change down, it just wants you to rev the nuts off it. It gives you such a fantastic array of interesting mechanical noises at all speeds. You don't have to be doing supersonic speeds to appreciate this car. You can be driving along and drop it down, and then you get all this sort of weird fizzing and popping and tubular noises, and it's just wonderful. It's like having your own pet Tyrannosaurus Rex. Spitting and fighting and just giving you all sorts of aggro all the time. You're hanging on for dear life, but you're loving every single second of it. How do you fancy some beans then? Some early on beans. I can't wait any longer. I've got to unleash it. So normal beans, things happen. So this isn't going to be normal beans, this is going to be stupid beans. Ready? Oh my goodness me. Oh my goodness me. That is absolutely insane. I've never known a car like it. I mean, even the F12 TDF, now that was a bucking Bronco, but there was more sophistication in the way that it put down its power. It felt more composed. This doesn't. This feels raw and unbridled and absolutely insane. I mean, come on. That is, by any yardstick, astronomical. It's like having Game of Thrones underneath the bonnet. It's just so precise and so disgustingly mechanical that you can't help but love every single second of it. Honestly, I could listen to this all day. I'm kind of glad that Ferrari have hidden the stereo beneath the plaque, because it's just superfluous, isn't it? You just don't need it. Who would want to listen to music whilst driving one of these? It makes its own music. Its music, its engine is better than any band, even the Beatles. The comparisons with the TDF, similar ferocity, but the TDF is a bit more sanitized. This is the rawer beast. This is the more Ferrari. Now the steering is ultra light. Obviously there's not really anything to distract you. You just have to look ahead and hang on for dear life. I've got good visibility everywhere. The wing mirrors, windscreen, I can see behind. I've got pretty good visibility all round. Those little quarter lights there, back there, help to see things at junction. So it is quite a usable supercar. What I love the most though is just looking over that bonnet, because you've got all those grills and sort of big cuts into it, and it just looks like a fabulous piece of sculpture, which of course it is. Now I'm happy to report the air conditioning is working well on this model. It was a complaint on the early cars. And also what you notice straight away, of course, is this is pre-double clutch gearbox. So we have one of those early paddle shift numbers, which means that if you keep your foot flat to the floor whilst changing, things can get a little jerky. So I find that the best way to change gears in this car is to just lift ever so slightly on the change, like that, and it's a lot smoother. Whereas if you do it like that, you get a bit of a kick. So it does kind of highlight again the inherent weakness in these early paddle shift ones. It's quite versatile, this thing. It's not always the snarling animal, but even when you're driving around at 30 mile an hour in this nice little leafy suburb, you can just sense that this thing sort of wants to kill you. It's really, it wants to be let off the leash constantly. You don't have to drive it at 10 tenths. You want to drive it at 10 tenths all the time, but if you really force yourself to, this could easily cross Europe in a single bound. So what do I like about the 599 GTO? I like its subtle looks. I like the fact that it's a lot more muscular than you first think. It's aging particularly well, I think, this shape. The inside, the interior is very well constructed. It's a really nice place to be. Lots of carbon fiber, good quality materials. I like the uncluttered, focused instrument binnacle. The fact that you've just got a nice slim steering wheel with not much on it. I like the fact that it's got a lot of F1 tech in it, but all of it just is hidden. It doesn't get involved, it doesn't shout about it, it just tries to keep you on the road. I love, obviously, that Enzo-derived bonkers 6-litre V12. How could you not love that? It's so special, more special, really, than even the F12 and the TDF engine. And I like the fact that it's angry and it's challenging to drive. And that's really what you want. I would love to take a car like this off to the Alps and just enjoy it and wring every single RPM out of its glorious engine. What do I not like about it? To be honest, probably the suspension. It's a little bit harsh and it does get unsettled quite easily on British B roads. And I also think the paddle shift gearbox is quite a weakness on this car. I really wish it had the modern gearbox so you could bash through the gears and really enjoy that engine without those pauses, without that jerkiness. But apart from that, it is absolutely fan-friggin-tastic. It's one of the greatest Ferraris that I have driven. I would have no hesitation in writing a check out for one of these. Oh, it's got the name, it's got the history, it's got the performance, it's got everything you need, frankly, in a modern Ferrari. It makes the ultra-modern turbocharged Ferraris seem utterly sterile and completely boring. I don't know how I'm going to get into my Pista Spider after this, because I just think it's going to feel like a Ford Mondeo. I think I do get the 599 GTO now. I've heard tales of it being an unruly animal, and certainly it's no pussycat, but you just have to be right on your A game. You've got to have your senses reined in, you've got to have 5 espressos, you need to be on top of it and aware of everything that it could do, and you just have to be on it, basically. You have to feel the need for speed. I mean, I know these cars now are becoming a lot more expensive, and let's face it, 650, 700,000 pounds is a lot of money, but you are getting a rare GTO. You can no longer really realistically buy a 288 GTO for anything less than 2.5 million, and you can't get a 250 GTO for anything less than 50 million. So actually, when you consider the bloodline and you consider what this is, and you factor in just how much bloody fun it is, it's sort of a bit of a bargain. And I flipping love it. I love the 599 GTO. I think it's more subtle looking than a lot of today's supercars, but it just delivers in terms of sensory overload. Thank you to Tony for letting me drive this wonderful example. And now I'm afraid, sadly, it's back to the studio. And there's just time for a brief history of the Ferrari GTO. Where does that name come from? Well, it all stems from motorsport and the 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. The name is a conjunction of GT, Gran Turismo, and omologato, meaning homologation. The GTO was the homologated race car for the 1962 season, and it shared the same wheelbase as the tremendously successful 250 short wheelbase that came before it, and as such, ironically, it didn't even need to be homologated. It was developed by a team headed up by Giotto Bizzarini, yes, him, and in its rough prototype form seen prior to the 1961 Monza Grand Prix, it was nicknamed Il Mostro, the monster. The finished car appeared in 1962 and featured the racing engine from the 250 Testarossa, a 3-litre longitudinal V12 that developed 300 brake horsepower. It had lighter body panels, disc brakes all round, and as such it was a competitive race car right out of the box, coming second in its first ever race at the 12 Hours of Sebring. It went on to win the Tour de France in 1963 and 1964, and class wins in the Targa Florio in 62, 63 and 1964, and not to fail to mention winning Le Mans on its debut and also in 1963. In short, it was a revelation. Ferrari only made 36 250 GTOs, 28 in left-hand drive and just 8 in right-hand drive, and it's since become the most revered and most valuable Ferrari of all time. And all 36 were also registered for road use, with many driven to this day. Ferrari didn't use the GTO name again until 1984 with this. The 288 GTO, officially actually only called GTO, announced by Enzo Ferrari himself in 1983, but formally revealed at the Geneva Motor Show in March 1984. This 2.9-litre 400 brake horsepower twin-turbo V8 was a homologation for competition in Group B, an ill-fated series that was cancelled soon afterwards for being too dangerous. But Ferrari went ahead with the sale of the road cars anyway. 272 288 GTOs were made as road cars between 1984 and 1986. It was based on the chassis of the 308 GTB, but with a longitudinal engine and with a wider front and rear track, and a turbocharged engine that was later used in the F40. Like the 250 GTO, the rarity of the 288 GTO has meant a surge in values, and it's now one of the most prized Ferraris in the modern era. And then, in 2010, the 599 GTO arrived, only the third car in Ferrari's 75-year history to wear that badge. Thank you for watching this episode on the magnificent Ferrari 599 GTO. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting and entertaining. If you like what we're doing on The Car Guys, please subscribe, leave comments and likes. There'll be another episode next week.